Hello and welcome to a special weekend edition of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. Normally I publish these interviews on Wednesdays, but I have so many interviews right now with all these fascinating hemp people that I just want to get them to you as I can. So today, like I said, is a special weekend edition. Today is Saturday, October 2nd, and this is an interview with Nick Walters. He is from the National Hemp Growers Co-op. He's based in Mississippi. I met him out in Montana over the summer at the Hemp Summit at I&D Hemp, who, by the way, is a sponsor of our show. So thanks to I&D Hemp. I also saw Nick down at the Southern Hemp Expo in North Carolina a few weeks ago, and I gave him one of our National Hemp Tour hats, and he's very, very excited to have this hat. So anyway, let's just get into this interview, and then we'll let you get back to your weekend. Hope you're having a good time there. The weather here in Pennsylvania is absolutely beautiful. It's my favorite time of the year, October. Anyway, here we go. Nick Walters from the National Hemp Growers Co-op. Welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing today?
I am well today, and I am wearing my hemp tour cap right now, given to me by none other than you, and I'm gladly to wear it around town.
Good. Do you get any reaction from people when they see your fantastic hat?
I do.
Yeah? What are people saying?
First off, they said, that's a cool hat. I've never had that hat before. Just the hat itself apparently is cool enough. And then, oh yeah, hemp. Tell me about that. That's, it's a good opener for me to talk about industrial hemp and what that is and what we're not. And we're headquartered here in Mississippi, and our Supreme Court has gone back and forth and knocked down an initiative for medical marijuana. And, so it gives a great way for us to start having some dialogue about hemp.
Yeah,
so
good.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, sure. So I met you out in Fort Benton, Montana back in July. I didn't know that there was a National Hemp Growers Co-op. So why don't you start off telling me about the co-op?
Yeah, well, it's a totally different business model than what most would think of as their local cooperative. And a typical cooperative model is there's some type of value-added processing that is being done to a product, right? Or some type of agricultural grown product is typical. And so if it's a dairy, or if it's orange juice production or ocean spray cranberry juice or whatever, the idea is that the growers, the producers within a certain geographic area, pool their money in one shape, form, or fashion, and then put in the value-added production facility. Mm-hmm. And then that facility produces the ice cream that you would sell to your local supermarkets. Our cooperative model is different. It's governed differently, but because it is a national cooperative, our dividend payments are all geared around different business units that we would be involved in throughout the country. So no matter where you live, even if we are not purchasing hemp from you, you still have an opportunity to participate in the dividends from around the nation. So it's a republic instead of a democracy. We think our founders may have had some of that right. I have seen from part of my previous lives of how cooperatives can go upside down because it gets to be a little bit too much democracy. Maybe a handful of people are disgruntled and they want to change things in a different way, and things can go just upside down real quick. So we have built in benchmarks and different spots along the way that enable every grower to have a voice, but it's actually governed by a group of board of directors that are elected at a national meeting. So
okay.
It's a little different.
Right.
And we can dig into as much as you want. But that's just kind of the overview. And so we are every day about the business of trying to find more and more value-added opportunities for us to do commercialization, production, particularly as it relates to industrial hemp.
All right. So, yeah,
food and fiber.
Walk me through it a little bit. Let's say I'm a I'm a grain producer in Ohio, or I'm a fiber producer in Kansas. Like, what's the benefit of joining the co-op, and how does it work? How would I interact with the group? How would I make money?
Right. So you would make money if the facility was in your neck of the woods. Let's say 75 miles, 100 miles away from where you are, and everything starts with a contract, and with a contract that we have vetted and done due diligence on, to know that the check's going to clear the bank, right? There are plenty of folks that got involved in the hemp industry early on that had contracts, but they weren't worth the paper they were printed on. So our job is to bring those resources, have vetted that contract, and let's just say that it's a fiber production facility and they're going to make, some, let's just say textiles, okay? And the textile manufacturer says, I need X tons of hemp. I need it to look exactly like this. I need it to be processed exactly like this, that, and the other. And I need it delivered to my door every month in this amount. And therefore, I will pay you, Z dollars per ton for it to show up that way. We then go back in from that to say, all right, well, then we, the co-op, need to put together that facility because we have a contract to fill. And we would not bank everything on that one contract, but there would be multiple hopeful contracts that would be able to use that fiber in a way that it would be processed for that customer. And then that would become a business unit of the co-op. So let's just pretend we call it Textile, Processing Facility number 23, LLC. That would be that LLC. Okay. And then from that LLC, then the co-op, the national co-op, would own 25 to 30% of that LLC, of the revenue that would come from that. The rest of the revenue, or the rest of the stock, if you will, or the rest of the ownership of that LLC, we offer that back to our co-op members to ask them, hey, would you like to invest more than that? Or maybe we go out and borrow the money for the rest of it, and the co-op owns 100% of it. Or maybe we take other investors that would like to be a part of what we're doing with that, want to be a part of the hemp industry. So what we're not doing is going back to the farmer every time we need more money or every time we need more capital expenditure put in. So the grower then gets a couple of bites at the apple if that facility is somewhere near them. So she's first off going to get a contract to grow that before she ever puts a seed in the ground, she already knows it's got a home. If we have done our job right, then her inputs are lower because we have aggregated from like a typical co-op and aggregated in bulk purchased, like Sam's or Costco would do, right? Okay. We're bulk purchasing and for seed or for tractors or for insurance or a myriad of things like that. So those costs ought to be less. She's going to make a good profit. It'll be a nice profit, but it's not going to be a crazy get rich profit. So where she's going to make money, reduce risk by planting a crop that is already purchased before she ever grew it. Right. It also, by the way, sidebar, helps our contractor, the groups with whom we have contracts, to know that they're getting consistency in what the way that the crop is actually being grown, or in our case, maybe even in processing. So she's got that. Her second piece is just by being a member of the cooperative, because the co-op owns 25% of that LLC, part of her dividend payment is coming from just the profits that are going to happen anyway, no matter where she lives. And then the third way is that if she wants to invest even more into that particular facility, whether that's a facility that she's providing the hemp for or not. So let's just say there's a grain facility in, Minot, North Dakota. She lives in, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. You did teach me to say that,
yeah,
right?
I noticed
right?
that.
Lancaster,
Nice.
not Lancaster. Yeah,
well done.
I'll listen every once in a while. And so, so if she lives in Lancaster, she's still going to get part of her dividend payments coming from the grain facility in Minot, North Dakota.
Okay.
And she could invest in that if she wanted to,
Right.
if she really liked the pro forma that went along with that. So that's about as quick a model as I could throw at you. But we're trying to move away from a couple of pieces of what is kind of typical co-op. One is that we're always going back to the members for more capital expenditure whenever the production facility needs an upgrade, or they want to add more equipment, or, a tree falls through the roof, and, whatever. I mean, that's the typical model of where we're always going back to them for more money. And the other is our members are not having to be solely focused on how much are you paying me for my crop. While we want them to be concerned with that, and they ought to be concerned with that, well, look how much money you're making from the entirety of the dividends that are coming in. And when those dividends are things like we're doing in renewable energy or natural gas production, renewable natural gas, that we're getting into the millions of dollars of revenue, then that starts to make that number even more attractive than, let's just say, maybe, cranking out some hemp hearts somewhere. Although that's good.
Yeah.
Or as they'd say in Seinfeld, there's nothing wrong with that.
With that.
I mean, that's still very good stuff. But it's mixing all of that revenue together. So we're trying to keep it away from what would be typical. Well, how much you're going to make out of it on my crop, and how much you're going to pay me for it.
Right.
My experience is that growers will grow, peppermint sticks if that's what you show them. It's going to make them some money. Sure. And show them how it's going to work. So
is this hypothetical at this point, or do you have the co-op? Do you have members? Do you have contracts? Do you have facilities? Or is it happening? It is happening, but it has not happened at the level we want it to happen. Okay. So and that's for a reason. Today, as you and I speak, we are actually just an LLC with my other two partners and I. The way the model is structured is that we have common stockholders and we also have preferred stockholders. So the preferred stockholders are people who just invest just like they would invest in any other project that you might put your money into. You do not have to be a hemp licensee. To be a common stockholder, which means you have voting rights, you do have to be a licensed hemp grower in your state. But because of the preferred stockholder piece, that has all the things to do with the public security that would be, as I am told by our attorneys, and we have to have forward-looking statements, and we have to have, all the things that say, are you a qualified investor? All of that has to go into that preferred stockholder. So when we do the initial stock offering, we've got to have all those I dotted and T's crossed, and that just takes more time to pull together than it would to actually if it was just our co-op members and we were all putting our money in the pot and starting the cooperative. So we expect to have that done before the end of the calendar year. Another real practical piece about that, Eric, is that as a startup, one of the problems with co-op startups is you've got to go back in the democracy model where everybody's got a voice, which sounds good until you're trying to keep the trains running on time, right? Moses didn't lead by committee, right? And I'm not trying to say that we're at the same level. We're not getting our words directly from on high, but it's just not a practical way to try to start things moving and going when we have to continually, go back and say, may we do this, or can we do this, or we're thinking about doing this. We're right now in a mode where we're putting a lot of things out there trying to connect the dots. Once we become that first initial offering document goes out, then our LLC will fold into the co-op. So anything we're doing now folds into that. So every day I'm about the business of being on the phone trying to find end uses for our co-op members. Okay. And where are we going to put our facilities? So we've got, as of today, 11 projects in the pipeline, in the funnel, that are at different stages of being developed, where we, the co-op, would either
provide some type of processed hemp, or we would be in a joint venture with somebody else who's got the Eureka equipment or says, hooray, we know how to make the stuff that we're going to be making from the hemp. But we also allow, to your question about how many members do we have, what we have right now is people who have said, growers who have said, hey, once you get that stock offering out the door, I want in. Don't, you know, I want in that first tranche. And our first amount of common stock is going to be 200 stockholders of stock that will be issued. So if they have said, hey, I already want in, and I want in as soon as you guys are ready to go, no matter what the other contracts may look like. So they're paying us $1,000 for us to hold them a spot. And we thought that was an amount of money that really kind of separated the sheep from the goats from people who were serious, but it wasn't such a barrier to entry, you know, that they couldn't pay it. So it kind of gives us an idea. So we got about 45 people right now across the country that are there. Most of them are in the Southeast, just because that's kind of where we're from. But we're expanding and knocking on doors every day.
Okay. And so you're actively looking for more hemp people to get involved. How would you describe these hemp people that you want? Are you looking at all aspects of the hemp industry, or are you just looking at fiber and grain, or are you getting into cannabinoids too?
Yep, nope, just fiber and grain. Okay. I mean, that's the only thing that we think is where we need to be putting our money or our time or our effort. And I think there's, you know, plenty of market information that spreads that out. We call this the Growers Cooperative and not the Farmers Cooperative, because there are many people who are involved as our members who have not been in production agriculture before, but they want to be a part of the hemp game. They want to grow. They got 12 acres somewhere, you know, and not 10,000 acres somewhere. And they need the help on how to plant, what to plant, where's it going. And we always want to ask those three questions, which is, how does growing hemp fit into what you're currently doing? Our second then is what will grow where you are? And the third one is, who is going to buy the crop once you grow it? And our members have different answers to those questions depending on their own personal situation. Sure. So we probably got another 45, maybe 50 folks that have said, okay, as soon as you get the offering document, I'm going to hedge my bet here, and I'm not going to give you this money to hold me a spot, but I want to be in, you know, and I'll take my chances on that. And so I'm ready to go once you guys have got your first facility that you would be joint venturing on up and running. Right. So we're pushing that noodle every day. But yeah, we want anybody and their mother, right? You know.
Well, maybe some of our listeners would be interested in getting involved. What's the best way to get in touch with you folks?
The best way to do that is just to go to our website at nationalhempcoop.us.
Nationalhempcoop.us. Okay, I'll put a link to that on the show page for this episode.
Terrific.
Yeah.
And then we've got a guy. One of our members is. That's part of what he does all day long. One of our fellow founding members, okay. Max Howell, and Max will pick up the phone and call you and get you an information packet and talk pretty to you and tell you anything that you know about how it works and what we're doing and how we're doing, and he keeps up with our day-to-day work that we're doing with our growers.
All right. So you're in Mississippi, like you live down there and you're watching the hemp industry develop down there. How do you see the American South fitting into the national hemp landscape?
Well, I think that's a two-part answer. The first is we are at a disadvantage because we don't know enough about what will grow here. We don't know which varieties will grow well, particularly not for fiber. Grain is not going to do well down here, is what our agronomist tells us. By the way, we've got a full-time PhD agronomist on staff with us, PhD from Colorado State. And we're in the process of doing seed trials right now. And we're even going to do some more in the spring and are announcing that hopefully sooner than later with what I would call some major players in the genetics world in hemp. but we don't know. So we really think fiber is going to be the thing for the South, as the thing that we would be most likely to participate in. Now, certainly CBD and cannabinoids and all of that can happen too, but because we're not focused on that, that's where we're going to be once we know more information about what will grow, and have an idea about not just planting seasons and this and other agronomy tricks, but how do we know what genetics are really going to work? I think that's one. I think long term for us is the second part of the answer to your question is we've got something that other parts of the country don't have, and that's an availability to water. And many of our production agriculture people, folks that have been in farming for a while, their fields are already irrigated for cotton and soybeans and corn and stuff. So it's unlike when we were in Montana and we could see where there's a lot of opportunity for winter wheat. We saw those two different fields, right? One that was irrigated and one that sure enough wasn't irrigated.
Big difference.
And so a big difference. And so our infrastructure, for the most part in the South, is already irrigated up. I mean, they've already put a lot of that infrastructure in, but just having access to an aquifer or access to water, just because of the way we're situated, I think long term for us, we're going to be in a much better spot than other parts of the country, simply because we're going to have access to water and be able to watch it grow.
How about processing capacity down there? I know there was talk of, I don't know, was it Bass Core down in Alabama? What's going on down there with processing?
Yeah, I mean, they're about it right now that I am aware of. There are a few other little spots. There's some spots over in North Carolina I know that are doing some processing, but no, we're not there yet. One of the things that is unique about this dynamic is you're probably watching it. Speaking of North Carolina, a lot of these states are giving up their state control of their hemp program and sending it back to USDA.
Right, I've seen that.
And like North Carolina is doing it, and I know Wisconsin, I think, is on the map to do that. And we in Mississippi have never had a state program from the beginning. It was always back at AMS at USDA.
Sure.
So what that also means then is that the processing, you don't have to get a processor's license in the state of Mississippi to process anything. In some of these other states, it will be the same way. Now, you have to fit into your local, zoning laws and stuff like that, but not anything where you've got to go pay $5-10 grand or whatever it is to be a processor. So I think that might give us an advantage down in our neck of the woods. But we've got, and this kind of fits into part of my former life when I was the state director at USDA Rural Development here in Mississippi. I was appointed; those are appointed spots, presidential appointments. And I was appointed by George W. Bush to be that person here.
Okay.
We do. That's rural economic development. Is really what that part of what rural development is all about. So, how do you take tax credits and government guaranteed loan programs and grants and this and match all of that stuff together in order to pull together a manufacturing facility? Well, that's way in the middle of my wheelhouse for us to do every day. And so where might we put these facilities? So many rural areas throughout the country have industrial parks that are as empty as my head. But they got room there. They've got infrastructure. It's already been zoned. Right. They've already done the environmental on the land that's there. It's already got electricity and gas and rail and water. I mean, not every one of them, right? But I mean, they've got a lot of these assets that are there, and they're looking for places to land a project like this. And so the more rural you go, the better it is for our growers, right? Because that's the more likely spot where they're going to be, where they're going to be growing the crop. So,
and it could revitalize, small town America all over the country. Yep.
It could have a huge impact because it's not only just the jobs at the processing facility, but it's also the economic, the ripple effect that goes because now the grower has got, a different place for his, her crop to go, or new people that are coming in to the mix because of the of how cool hemp can be and how well it can be grown, right? So if you have a co-op, I'm hard selling you now, okay? But if you've got a co-op where you don't have to go purchase all of the equipment, or we can purchase some equipment that is used in a regional way, in a neighborly way, and we go back and say, hey, to Andy Bish and say, yeah, we need two of your processing pieces of equipment over here because we've got 15 farms that are going to be using it, during harvest or whatever.
Right.
Then those inputs go lower for those people and doesn't make it such a barrier to entry if you want to get into the farming game, okay? And you want to get into this. You're probably not going to do that if you've got, 14 acres somewhere and you decide, well, I think I'm going to go plant all that in cotton tomorrow. Well, you better have a B plan, right? Or you better have a big checkbook, right? I mean, if that's what you're going to do.
Well, that's what they say. How do you make a small fortune in farming?
How's that?
Start with a large fortune.
I had one grower the other day called me up and said, hey, look, we're thinking about growing some of that hemp down here. I said, well, good. Let's talk about it. He said, but you got to promise me one thing. I said, what is that? He said, you got to promise me I'm going to make absolutely no money on it because that's the only way I know how to do farming right now. I said, can't promise you that. That's not what we're doing.
It's a sad state of affairs in agriculture these days.
It is.
Do you spend much time in Kentucky?
My partner is in Kentucky.
Okay.
And he was one of the very first hemp licensees when the 2014 Farm Bill allowed those pilot programs. The governor created a statewide advisory board as they were getting into hemp for the ag commissioner and others in the state to kind of watch after. And he got appointed to that board and was eventually chairman of it. So he's had a long in the tooth of understanding hemp. He's seen the good and the bad, right, of what has come through, and which is part of the motivation of why we wanted to do the co-op in the first place, because the one consistent thing that was happening in a lot of those other projects is the farmer kept getting screwed, and because they had no ownership in the processing part. They were just being contracted for their crop. And unless you have somebody that's really good and somebody that's honorable and somebody trying to do the right thing, like our friends, the Elliots are in Fort Benton at I&D Hemp, if you don't have a Ken Elliott that is with whom you are written your contract with, your risk goes way up. Yeah. And so that's why we wanted to go down.
Yeah, we need more people like Ken Elliott.
Yeah. Ain't no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. But yes, we're looking at we've actually got two of those projects that I mentioned that we've got in our funnel. Two of those are in Kentucky, and they're all industrial hemp.
All right. So in the early days of my podcast, I would often ask, how can the farmer avoid getting the short end of the stick? And I think you just alluded to some of that. But I think my new question now for people is, have you ever gone golfing with Mitch McConnell?
Industrial hemp.
Well, we've got some folks that have done that.
But not you personally.
Not me personally. I have not been golfing with Mitch McConnell.
Industrial hemp.
But that's the beauty of all of this. But I know a guy that has, and so that's the beauty, right? It ain't about what you know; it's about who you know, and it's about friends buy from friends, and that's worked well for me thus far.
All right. Well, good, Nick. It's great to talk to you. I was on your podcast last week, right? Was that last week?
Yeah. Yes, you were. That's right.
Yeah, and it was fun talking to you. You asked me a bunch of questions about our road trip, and I've successfully blocked out most of that now. It was a big undertaking, but yeah, we're looking forward to the fall.
There you go.
What is the name of your podcast and webinar, and so we can get other folks listening to that?
Thank you. Our podcast is going to be released the next week, as a matter of fact. Will be all of our past episodes of our webinar Wednesdays, including yours, are being bundled up and is one great big release that should be hitting iTunes approval this week for it to go out next week. So every Wednesday at 2:00 Central, we have what we call our webinar Wednesdays, where people can actually sign up and be in the chat room and talk with our guest.
Oh, okay.
Which we think is unique and pretty fun. And then it just depends. Sometimes we have 10 people in there. Sometimes we have one. Sometimes we have nobody. Sometimes people are listening, but they don't chat, but it's an option for them. And then we take the audio from that, and then that is converted into the Industrial Hemp Growers Digest is the name of the podcast.
Okay.
So the Industrial Hemp Growers Digest is the podcast. And we are obviously then focusing on the industrial hemp side.
All right, there you go. Nick Walters from the National Hemp Growers Co-op. Thank you for your time today. It's great talking to you.
Appreciate you, Eric. Thanks.
And just like that, the special weekend edition of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast comes to an end. My name is Eric Herlock, and I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Oh, one thing before we go. The Pennsylvania Hemp Summit, which is coming up in early November. It was going to be at the Convention Center in Lancaster, but they just made the tough decision to hold it virtually again this year. So we'll have some more information about that in the coming weeks. So anyway, let you get back to your weekend. Thanks for listening. You can always drop me a line, send an email to podcast@lancasterfarming.com. All right, until next time, I'll see you in the newspaper. Episode 160 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast, copyright 2021 by the Lancaster Farming Newspaper, Barley's Time Communication Family. Today's show is written, recorded, and produced by Eric Carlisle. The music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tim Bird Shadow.